Hello, welcome to this video. I'm super excited about what I'm going to be filming today. I'm going to be basically going through all of my favorite fantasy reads. I have quite a lot. Like, it's an overwhelming amount for me because I have to edit all of it. I'm pretty excited about this since fantasy has been my first love when it comes to books and reading. There's gonna be mostly YA fantasy with the exception of one adult fantasy. All of these fantasy recommendations have romance or like a romance subplot, but I will kind of tell you the degree of what they have in them just so that you can get exactly what you're looking for if you're looking for like a specific thing. I'm gonna try to go through these fairly quickly and explain them as well as I can just because there are, I haven't even actually counted, well, 13. Okay, so there are 13 recommendations here. I'll ironically start with the least fantasy one. It's actually not even really fantasy, it's just young adult fiction, but it's the only one like this, so I'll just get it out of the way. The Inheritance Games is about a girl named Avery who goes to high school. She randomly gets called into the principal's office and is told that she's in this random rich guy's will and he died and now she has like 46 something billion dollars. She also gets his house, which all of his grandsons and daughters live. It's basically like Avery and the grandsons running around trying to solve riddles, and then there's also a love triangle with the grandsons. It's one of those books where you just really want to know what happens the whole time. I had so much fun reading this. I had a hard time putting this one down. One that I'd recommend to so many different people. There's also a second book called The Hawthorne Legacy, and then there's a third book called The Final Gambit, and that just recently came out and I haven't read it yet. Super excited to read that. I just felt the need to include this one because it's a really good book to read at this time because it has that mystery. There is plotting and plot twist moments that are really surprising in this. I actually got Truly Devious. I haven't read it yet, but I got Truly Devious because I just wanted more books that had the certain energy that this has. Yeah, I highly recommend this one. Also, if you're someone like me who doesn't really like to read super scary books, that might be a great mystery type book for you that won't make you scared. I'm definitely one of those people who gets scared fairly easily, but then sometimes fantasy books are probably like really scary, but then I still read those and I'm fine. I don't know. Next up, if I didn't recommend this one, I don't know what I would be doing. I've got to recommend Caraval because this is one of my favorite fantasies to date. I don't even know how to explain the magic that exists in this book. It kind of has a similar quality to the Inheritance Games in the way that the entire time you're like, what the hell is going on? There are these two sisters. Their dad's kind of an asshole. He's just really not a great guy. The older sister of the two sisters has been writing the Caraval Game Master or whatever. I promise I actually remember a lot about this book, but I'm really not the best with names at all. She's been writing him for 7 years. It says on the first page of the first line, it took 7 years to get the letter right. He finally answered one of her letters. She ends up going to this Caraval thing around where she lives because it finally is taking place near her. The line between what's real and what's not is so blurred. The thing about Stephanie Garber's writing, so beautiful and magical and descriptive in the best way. In my opinion, it is not super flowery or anything like that, but it's indulgent. I just love it. It's exactly what I like when I'm looking to read like a magical fantasy type of book. On the cover it says, remember it's only a game, and that's kind of a big point in the entire book. It's a game, but at the same time it's not really. The stakes are so high. A lot of crazy stuff goes down when people enter and like they're a part of the game, and she's becoming a part of the game. Romance is a big thing in these books. The other two are also really worth reading. It's not one of those series where you read the first book and you're like, why did I read this? Because now the second books are not really worth your time. This one, actually, the entire series was well worth my time. It's so much fun. I'm definitely gonna reread this one day because it was just such a good experience. Once Upon a Broken Heart is kind of a spin-off. It is a spin-off of Caraval because it's about one of the characters that's introduced in the later books. I forget if it's the last one or the second. I think he's introduced in the second one, but then the last one he's like in it more. The Prince of Hearts, Jax, is in this. He was one of my favorite characters in the Caraval books. I didn't even know this was coming out, and then all of a sudden I saw like someone do a review on it on Instagram and I was like, there's a book for Jax. That was just a dream come true. The next one comes out so soon. I already pre-ordered it. I'm so excited to read that. This was really, really good, but it also felt like this was leading up to something to where like it was almost like it was cut off. Desperately wanted more when I got to the end, but that's why it's so good. The second book is coming out so soon. It's like a good time to read this book if you haven't read it. Jax, the Prince of Hearts, he has one true love. If he kisses anyone else, they die, so he's kind of doomed to tragedy forever. He's really painted as a villain, but not really a villain. If you like the morally gray characters, he's definitely a morally gray character. I just love him. He's always like eating an apple, and I just think that's such a fun personality trait for him. He really seems like a character that's almost not real, something out of like a fairy tale story. It's done so well. And then Evangeline, her hair is literally like this color, this like gold pink color. Evangeline is trying to do something and she needs Jack, so she makes a deal with Jack. And yeah, this book is basically them working together, kind of. Like, they don't get along super well, but they also don't hate each other. Next, An Ember in the Ashes. I read the second book too and I absolutely loved it, and I know that other books in the series are regarded as being really good too, but I haven't read them. This is just such a solid fantasy read. It really draws you into the world. I feel like I'm gonna do a bad job of explaining this because I don't remember all the terminology. Okay, so there's these soldiers ruling over people, and there's a school for the soldiers. People come after her family specifically. There's a bunch of people who are getting attacked, but her family, something happens to where they're targeted. They take her brother. She's basically trying to save her brother throughout this book. She ends up being undercover with rebels at a school where like the soldiers are trained, like the bad guys. The bad people training at the school all have like silver masks that slowly meld to their face the more that they become what they're conditioned to be. There is definitely a really sweet romance in this that carries on into the next book. If you really like action, this has a good amount of action in it. I feel like the fighting scenes are really satisfying. You get to just read about some really high stakes, exciting stuff. So if that's what you're into, I feel like this is a really good one. If you want to read a political fantasy fairy romance, this is basically The Cruel Prince. It is enemies to lovers, even though people get really mad when it's marketed as enemies to lovers. By definition, that is what happens in these books. I don't think it should be said it's just like a romance, because it's definitely not. Just be aware of that when you go into it. But all the books that I've talked about aren't just romances, they're fantasies, but it's really the romance that had got me interested. That's why I'm sticking around. The actual plot of the book makes it so much better when it's really good, and all the ones I've talked about, very good in every single way. Some books have more romance than others, and I actually think that The Cruel Prince, in my experience with YA fantasy, I think The Cruel Prince has more romance than a lot of other books. I feel like Jude just really transforms throughout these books. She's great from the very beginning. She just turns the tables. Like, she is so fun to read about and to be in her head. She's constantly taking action. I love how she does so much of that solo, because it really feels like she's just so defined as a character. The things that she does are outrageous. She literally gets herself immune to poison by slowly poisoning herself over and over again. Come on now. That basically is Jude. If any of what I said just sounds interesting, I think you should check this out, because these are truly some of the best YA fantasy books I've read. It's actually one of the only ones that I've reread. I say these because the other ones too. I think maybe the second book might be my favorite. I'm not sure, but all of the books are good, so you will not be wasting your time with starting with this one. This is the book that restarted it all, that completely got me back into reading Six of Crows. Yes, I read this before Shadow and Bone. I don't think that you have to read Shadow and Bone first at all. I didn't love Shadow and Bone, but I loved Six of Crows, and I loved Crooked Kingdom. I don't know how it's possible that Crooked Kingdom, the second book of Six of Crows, measured up to Six of Crows, but it did, and somehow I think I even liked it like a little bit better. If you read this one, definitely read the next one too, because the way that I just got deeply connected to the characters in Six of Crows, I loved each of them so much. This book kind of has it all. It has an amazing plot and amazing characters. It has a found family with multiple romances in it. Just the most lovable characters ever, and like they all have things that give them so much depth, because you see what made them into the person that they are, and they all have that. None of them are lacking a rich history of being a human. That's just something that is not that common. It's not always, or even often, this well done. This story was so complex and fun and exciting, heart-wrenching. I love the Six of Crows duology so much. Moving on, I'm really just going through like all my favorite books ever right now. Clockwork Angel. This is from the Infernal Devices series. I read these books in the wrong order, so if you want to just go into the entire series, the Shadow Hunter world, I would say, I don't know, maybe don't read this one first so that you could read it in the right order, but I read the Infernal Devices series. This is the first one. It's the Clockwork Angel, and then there's also the Clockwork Prince and then Clockwork Princess after that. They were all so good. I couldn't stop reading them. Like right after I finished one, I'd go and get the next book. They're just very addictive and you get completely sucked in. I think it's a very good book for like the fall season, because these books have like a slight Harry Potter world feeling, because it feels magical and spooky. I feel like it has a smidge of Tim Burton vibe. Things are kind of grotesque sometimes. You can almost see them vividly painted in grays and dark dim colors. The characters really shine through. I love the characters in this. I really love this series. Oh, there's a love triangle in this. It was heartbreaking. One of the most intense love triangles I've read about. Shadow hunters, warlocks, angels are like a concept concept in this. Demon. I do plan on reading every book from that world, but I just get so into them that I can't stop reading them, so it's kind of scary. Okay, this is the only adult fantasy book in this video, but I had to recommend The Atlas Six. It truly is one of the best fantasy books I've ever read. It blew my mind. The amount of science, theory, magic, and fantasy in this, just like the mixture of it, the philosophy, everything just makes sense in this book. All the magic makes sense to me. It is impossible, but when I was reading this, I was like, yeah, could happen. Not to mention, this is one of the only fantasy books I've read that has pictures of the characters in it. When I finished reading this, I could not wait for the second one. I'm still waiting, you know, for the second one. The pain of being on that cliffhanger has dimmed, but when I first read it and I was done with that cliffhanger, I was on the cliff, falling off the cliff into nothing. I was in so much pain because I just was so desperate to know what happened next. I cannot wait for the next book of this. It is like dark academia. All takes place in like this giant library because knowledge is power, you know, that's a big thing in this book. So interesting and fun. I really recommend it. I love this book so much. Next, this is like a bit more of a light-hearted one. It's Fable. I just had such a fun, good time reading this that I just cannot include it because it was so good. For some reason, pirate books make me so happy and I don't know why. Just something about taking place on the water. This is definitely a book for the vibes. She is great. She can do no wrong. I have the second book that I haven't read yet and I don't know why because I did really love this book a lot. I think I just waited too long to get the second book, but I'm still planning on reading it. I wanted to grab it though because when you put them next to each other, it lines up into a face. Can we also just talk about how she's literally living on a ship? It never talks about makeup or anything like that. She's literally wearing like full glam. I guess not full glam. She has a natural base, but like she has deep red lipstick on right now and she definitely has mascara on, and I feel like she also did her eyebrows. I just needed to talk about that because it's been on my mind. She got left by her dad on this island when she was younger. She wants to like go on a ship and just like get off of this island that she was left on, and she's really good at finding these certain rock things. Sorry, it's been a little bit since I read it, so I don't really remember all the terminology. There's these like stones that are worth a lot of money, and that's basically how she supports herself on this island all by herself where her dad left her. And she can find these stones and trade them and get money for them. There's this one guy that she's been trading the stones with. She ends up seeking help from that guy and getting off of the island. I really just remember the day when I read that and I just know I was having an awesome time. Next, I'm going to talk about Kingdom of the Wicked. This is definitely a Halloween book. If you are thinking, oh, it's raining, maybe you have some chocolate nearby, maybe some tea, this is the book to read. Can I just say, the descriptions of Italy in this book and food, I have never been so cozy when like a setting's being described. And like, yes, it was spooky and creepy at the same time, but like I was loving it. I felt like curling up with a blanket while I was reading this. It was just a great time, and I remember I was like eating this chocolate. It was just such a good time. This experience, and when I was reading Fable, I remember those experiences so vividly because the book really wrapped me up in just this great imagery. It was such a good experience. This is a romance first and foremost. Not really, like I don't know if it's marketed as that compared to a lot of the other fantasies that I've been talking about. This one is romance heavy. This girl who's a witch and she is a twin sister. I believe they're twins. It's been a little bit since I've read this, so my bad if I'm messing up some stuff. I think I'm mainly getting it right. And her twin sister goes missing and she's like, what happened to her? She's basically trying to solve and investigate her missing twin sister, and she summons a prince of hell to find answers because she realizes her sister's been doing dark magic. He's just stuck there in the little circle because she basically has trapped him, and then they end up working together in some ways, and yeah, there's a romance. If that stuff sounds interesting to you, you should definitely check it out. I really liked the first book better than the second book so much, but then again, I still liked it enough to read the third book, and I don't think it was bad. I liked the specific vibes in this one so much. I am excited about the next one that's coming out really soon. I could give my opinion on that when that one comes out. Okay, next is The Prison Healer. This one, I read the third book recently. Loved it, just like I loved this one and the one that came after this one. The Prison Healer was recommended to me by someone on Instagram, and I'm so happy she recommended this to me because I absolutely loved this world. It got better as it went on, but this one was already really good. And it starts with this girl, Kiva, who's stuck in this prison, and her job is like the prison healer, so she makes little mixtures and, you know, cleans and stitches, all that stuff. And she's been in here for 7 years, I believe. She was first in there with her dad and he died when she was younger. She just has this whole really traumatic past, and that's why she has ended up in there. One day this guy comes into the prison, and it's like a prison that she has to clean up, sort him out, but he ends up changing everything because there's plot twists. And I don't know, I don't think that's something that's said. The rebel queen is captured. There's elemental rulers, and it's a family that has elemental powers: fire, water, earth, air. And then there's the rebel queen who has a different power. After the dude that I was talking about comes in, the rebel queen comes in. Oh, but then the rebel queen is charged to a trial by ordeal. It's a series of elemental challenges that if they can't pass them, they die, because the elemental challenges are like jump off this cliff or stay underwater for this long, go into this giant furnace. It's very intense. This queen that they're charged with doing this, she's literally passed out. Like, she's not surviving. But then she gets a note from her family that says don't let her die. Her family's been like secretly every once in a while talking to her through these discreet notes. She volunteers herself to go through this trial of ordeal. It's crazy and it's very good and it keeps getting better. So yeah, I do very much recommend The Prison Healer. Next up we have Legendborn. I feel like one of the main things that made me excited about this book is the fact that it's a bit of a King Arthur retelling with some twists and really cool magic involved. And it also takes place where Bree's going to this new school, but then the school has like this secret society. They're called the Legendborn. They hunt these monsters who are going, you know what, now that I'm talking about it kind of has some like Shadowhunter vibes to it, because they do fight demons and stuff like that. Her mother died and she's dealing with grief for like a good bit of the story. You read a lot about her just kind of growing, figuring things out and going through her grief, and then also dealing with this world that she's discovering that she wasn't supposed to have seen, things that she's seen, and now she's like dealing with the fact that she knows things. There's a slight love triangle in this that hints at a bigger one in the next book. If you like that brunette blonde hair love triangle energy, the golden boy, golden retriever, and then the mysterious dark haired bad boy, then that does happen in this book. So also is going to occur in the next one that's coming out really soon. That's something to keep in mind if you like that type of thing. I'm really not a big fan of love triangles, but I like this one and I like the Infernal Devices one too. She's trying to figure out what the mystery is behind her mom dying, and her trying to figure out what happened with her mom ends up intertwining with her journey with the secret society, and she really starts getting deep into that. She also starts to realize that she has some powers she didn't know about, as you could see on the cover. There's a super big twist at the end that I did not see coming, and it honestly was such a good twist. It just like wrapped up the whole story and made it that much better. So if all that sounds interesting to you, you should definitely read this. I loved it, gave it 5 stars. I feel like the writing was really good too, and the relationships were very real, and I feel like Bree as a character was really well developed. I feel like I got to know her really well throughout reading it, which is always nice when you're reading a fantasy book where you're inside of her head the entire time. Highly recommend this one. Next up, the last and final book I'll be recommending is the Shatter Me series. This series, I didn't really like the first book that much, but you know, I kept reading because it did keep me interested. And then I read the second book, didn't love that one, but it was getting better. And then I read Ignite Me. These books are worth it. First of all, they're very entertaining and they're super fun to read. But Ignite Me, that book got me obsessed. And then I read Restore Me after that. I was like, how? Because I wasn't expecting Restore Me to be that good. And then it just was. A lot of people love all the other books that I haven't read too. I do want to go in and just read the other books. I do know a big twist that happens in the other books that I shouldn't know yet, but I do. But it starts off, oh my god, you know what one of my favorite things is in this book? Juliet's character development. It feels as though she becomes who she's always meant to be. You could see the flickers of that person in her character from the very beginning, but she really just transforms throughout the books, and it's one of the coolest things to read about. It felt so right as she's starting to get more and more sure of herself and powerful and just accepting herself a lot more. It just was, oh, it was so good to read. And in the beginning of this, she's in this psych ward type of thing. Her diary is really frantic and it's representing her thoughts. She crosses out a bunch of stuff and it shows it. It's like she's writing in her diary. There's like a lot of self-hate and no self-acceptance, because the thing about her, I forgot to mention this, when she touches people, they do die. She has this thing where like her touch is lethal, so people die. That really evolves throughout this book. You would think, oh, where can you really go from there? But it really goes a long way. She ends up being taken from the psych ward place to be like experimented on by this dude. Well, I think, isn't he called Warner at first? But his name's actually Aaron. He takes her in for experiments. I don't know much more to say other than that without spoiling anything. It's kind of dystopian. Now she's just kind of being experimented on and was in a psych ward. Her life really sucks. That's basically what this first book mostly is. This page is very repetitive. Everything's crossed out. It's really chaotic being inside her mind. These books are really an emotional roller coaster. They're addictive. I read them so quickly because I just could not stop reading them. I highly, highly recommend them. Those are all the fantasy books that I recommend. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like this video and subscribe if you want to see more of my book videos. I'll see you in the next one.